Recording is on.
Right.
Hello. So this is going to be a conversation between Bob and Sophie, or Englishmannen. And today is August the 4th, 2022. I'm traveling in time. And
1914, I think, is probably a
yeah,
good
I was going to say 1922.
yeah.
And so we have starting this Extinctionati conversation experiment one-to-one, and we're going to see where that leads us.
Mhm.
And our founder Hugh started doing this with a few members one-to-one a while back, and we haven't done this yet. So we're going to see where this goes. And what do you think of that, Bob?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think there's just room for conversations. I think that's audio and the one-to-one format will be interesting to explore as opposed to the meeting format, which even our meetings tend to be sort of one-to-one with an audience some of the time or whatever. But yeah, we'll just be interesting to see what the dynamic is like and how this works. And maybe
Yeah.
it will lead to some sort of regular conversations between various people, and maybe some new people would be interested in joining in as well.
Yes, yes. There might be some questions that some people who are just listening might want to bring up, and on a one-to-one format might be easier because the meetings, as we had them for the last 2 years, were dominated by one speaker, and
Yeah.
there were a few interventions and a few questions. But I'm seeing that in the comments of the meeting, sometimes two people interact and start talking. So I think it might also have open a channel for a few people who have things to say or questions to ask or avenues to explore.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, good point. Because I think sometimes the feeling of coming into a sort of group dynamic. I mean, I still feel that way. Coming into a group dynamic isn't always that easier thing to navigate. So maybe people who feel like they want to have a conversation about things might be a bit more encouraged to join in if we said, hey, let us know if you want to have a one-on-one conversation about something, and we'll have a chat, and it's just one-on-one, and then it can be, maybe we're not committed to putting it out as well, something
Yeah,
like that. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
yeah, because I still don't fucking feel remotely competent to be saying anything to anyone really, and why anybody would want to listen. So yeah, but it feels a lot easier. I suppose if there's a one-on-one conversation, apart from anything else, one of us has to be saying something. So you can't just be a lurker. Something like that,
But
isn't
the
it?
issue of competence is not really relevant, because who is competent? Do you know, especially when we have lost a guy who is so intelligent and so able to talk on any subject. So everybody feels incompetent after having interacted with Lord Hugh.
Mhm.
I think it's not a question of competence; it's a question of exploration and maybe furthering what we have been doing. So we can just have this totally on a free format,
Mhm.
go wherever we want, no topic, or unless it's something, a precise question. We can also comment on the week on, or a few weeks before, on Reddit, what's been said or been put on, because sometimes there's been some comments that are just not really answered to. There's some
Mhm.
interesting things that are posted regularly on Reddit, and some people who might comment might want to have a conversation with the person who's posted the whatever topic they have chosen. I was
Yeah.
thinking, for example, there's been things on well, there hasn't been many things on current affairs. I think we kind of don't fall into that trap too much.
Mhm.
But there has been stuff on recently. I see yesterday somebody posted on the flippening.
I
You
just
know,
I just thought I still have to bloody look at Reddit now anyway, don't I? As frustrating as that is, because I can't
yeah,
post.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I know. I posted something also that a funny fellow called Vatkin was talking about, where he was talking about psychosis. I mean, there's all sorts of different things that could come up, and I haven't seen. I've seen a few people commenting. I've seen a few people who haven't.
Mhm.
It might bring out some people from the shadows who want to who want to talk, and in between meetings too, because there can be some topics in the meetings where the usual speakers would have taken first, how do you say that? First, oh God, I'm looking for my words there. You know, who have been talking, and the people who are listening can't intervene. So there might be even people on the meeting who want to talk about something that was in the meetings. So there you go.
And it's it's more. It's, I guess it's a bit easier as well to facilitate one-on-one conversations between different people. So I guess we're sort of throwing a gauntlet in that case, aren't we?
Exactly.
And we're saying if anybody finds this, well, you're interesting or shite and thinks they could do better, and get in touch with us somehow. And let's, so any of the, general sort of lurking people or people who kind of come to the meetings and don't chip in as much as they'd like, then maybe we have some, we can organize some one-on-ones and see what comes of that.
Yes, actually, it's quite easy to get in touch with us because we have, well, for me, I'm on Reddit, and I can receive private messages there. We also can have things on Discord. There is a channel, and there's also a Substack and an Odyssey. There is one YouTube channel where our meetings are recorded, and if people want to get in touch in the comments, they can get through to the person who's uploading the video. So there's various ways of getting in touch with us, and I think that could be a start for those one-to-one conversations as well.
Yeah. Can anybody join the Discord, do you know? Anybody?
I'm not too sure because I'm not very competent on that. I wouldn't know how to do that. But I suppose if they request a link, somebody has contacted me through Reddit a while back, and I sent the link to Discord, and it worked. So
okay, all right. So then the answer must be yes then.
I'd say it's yes, but I wouldn't be able to. I'm not competent enough to answer on that one. But there's other people in our group who would know more about this. So you can always question on private message, and we can get through to people that way. So to start that conversation between me and you, I had the idea of that because you sent me a message a while ago asking that you were wondering if there was a particular feature psychologically of people like us who are willing to accept the situation, and why are most people just blocking it out, and why are we not in denial? And that triggered in me all sorts of things, and I answered you, and I thought, well, you replied to me, because I really said to you basically, traumatized people can see through the lies, and that we probably I've got a sort of awakening that's been gradually happening over the years to what's hurting our world. And you said, yes, trauma might be the connection. So would you like to start on that?
Well, I've been listening to a thing called Fight Like an Animal that was recommended by Going South. And I found it so interesting that I've ended up sort of listening from the first episode in the series. So there's a lot of bloody hours. And it took me a little while to get into it because this bloke sounded a bit, sort of was a bit drawly. And I just found it a little bit challenging to, I guess, to sort of tune into his vibe. But now I have, and I'm kind of obsessively listening, I suppose. And he talks about all that stuff. See, this is one of the problems of having these conversations, because I don't have that capacity to like remember the intellectual threads. So I will tend to listen to some information and sort of get the gist of it, and then come to a conclusion or agree with the conclusion, and then I will tend not to hold on to the sort of the supporting information, if that makes sense. So all I can say is that by listening to about so far 20 hours of this fucking bloke talking, one of the things is that people who suffered trauma might be a bit more aware of stuff, and human beings like are amazingly good at denialism, which is something that preoccupies me anyway, because if you talk about a subject, it doesn't matter what it is, if you offer someone a piece of cake and they're diabetic, and you sort of say, "Oh, would you like a piece of cake?" and they go, "Oh no, actually, it's not good for you, is it? You're diabetic. You shouldn't be having the sugar." And you know, people will sort of then create a bunch of distractions or talk bollocks for a bit, blah blah blah, and then eat the cake, even though it's going to kill them. There's that kind of, we have that amazing capacity to just completely disregard reality. And then if you try to confront someone with that and say, "Oh, you're diabetic, you shouldn't have eaten that cake," blah blah blah, and then they get really defensive, or they try and pretend that they didn't do anything weird. Is that a good reference point? Does that make sense? And so
Yes, it does. And I also wanted to ask you about this podcast that you were mentioning. Can you repeat the name of it, and maybe we could put the link in the comments under this this conversation.
Yeah, it's called Fights Like an Animal. Fight Like an Animal. So do you keep notes and everything? Are you being the?
Now I'm not, but usually I do.
Okay.
I do.
I'll send you a link to it anyway, because it's, you know, it's like,
yeah. If you send me a link, I'll be able to put it under the conversation.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit more about this podcast, or do you remember? Or did you take notes?
Yeah. So this guy is like was I think a member of like Earth First, like, which was an environmental campaign or a protest movement sort of organization, and he's been involved. It's an American bloke from maybe Portland or something, and he's been involved in like the protest movement in a way that I definitely haven't. And he's been involved in those actions of like saving trees, and he was, I think, most recently involved in the pipeline protests in the United States. So he's like a, you know, he's a warrior, environmental warrior of some sort. He's got some sort of health problems, whatever. He did have a traumatized childhood, and yeah, he's I think that the main theme is really that he studies sort of human evolution and biology, and is interested in sort of exploring the biological roots of human behavior and how that pertains to our inevitable destruction of the biosphere. So he's bringing like a very scientific sort of approach. Yeah, I don't know, it just sort of ties together a lot of ideas that I guess aren't explicitly related to that much. But yeah, I don't know what else to say. I mean, the first few episodes of the podcast, if you go back to the beginning, discussed the sort of biological origins of the left-right divide in terms of political affiliation, and sort of talking about how, you know, right-wing mindset, meaning a sort of tendency to authoritarianism, might be informed by biological tendencies, as a left-wing tendency or political orientation, which means a tendency to sort of egalitarianism. You know, again, they come from biological origins, in meaning that certain way that the chemistry or the you know, the fucking physical makeup of your brain has turned out will reflect on whether you like have a tendency to believe that society should be run along authoritarian lines or egalitarian lines. So he goes into that and brings, you know, various insights from scientific research and so on and so forth to support that idea, if that makes sense.
Well, it doesn't really make sense to me, because I mean, this kind of divide is very alien cortex, like saying, you know, from a scientific point of view, I'm going to show you that the right will operate more from this type of brain, and the left from another. I really wouldn't follow that sort of thing, because it's again a labeling and putting things into compartments, and this divide left right, and you can't really extend it to the biological, I think. I mean,
Yeah.
I
think
it's just another, you know, it's another pigeonhole.
I can't really, yeah, the thing is that I can't make any sort of, the point about that is that I can't make any arguments about that one way or the other, I suppose. So yeah, you have to listen to the podcast. I mean, he's basically saying there are biological differences between like chimps and bonobos, and
yes, there are actually.
Yeah. So he's saying that when you look at those differences, when they reflect in a human being, then there's a tendency to some people to be aggressive and right wing, and another tendency for people to be more sort of, you know, whatever, non-aggressive and left wing or whatever, or more hierarchical power-based thinking or more egalitarian. But again, I'm just in no position to take up any of the specific details, so I'm sort of summarizing my impression, but I'm not in a position to make any argument for or against the position that he articulates, except to say it's worth listening to because he's done his fucking homework. And that's what I'm saying. So if there are differences in like brain structure that can be identified between, again, chimps and bonobos is something that's stuck with me because it's an easy sort of I can kind of I've got the image of that, these aggressive monkeys versus the orgy monkeys, and there are sort of biological characteristics that influence that difference. And like one of the things he's talking about is if you have a egalitarian mindset and you're looking for sort of more peaceful approach to sort of social organizing, then in a way that's a disadvantage because the dominant personalities in our society are authoritarian and more prone to aggression or happier to use aggression and so on. So all of that stuff. Now I don't know. As I say, I can't go into the detail of this is the thing where Hugh would have picked up something and then gone off on a whole la with facts and figures and cite.
He would have said the bonobos sorted their problems by having mega orgies and sex. That's what he says. But it's more. I mean, I think
the thing is, as soon as that aggressive thing comes along, it gets in the way of that.
I need to listen to that podcast, and I think the people who are listening maybe have to, but what's more interesting is that listening to that podcast triggered something in you, and you started it made you reflect on the denial of people and what was the psychological background to this denial of where we are, and I'm interested in that, your reaction.
I'm preoccupied with that. I'm like obsessively preoccupied with that, as in I notice it in every interaction I have with human beings, and I notice it in myself in very small ways. Like when I'm practicing music, when I'm doing my practice and I'm working on something that's complicated, and I've done a certain amount of work on a complicated thing, and then I sort of progress and the complicated thing starts feeling easier, I then notice I go into a slight mode of denial about the next complicated stage I need to deal with for a while. And it's very minor. It doesn't lead to ecological meltdown, but I've noticed a tendency to like literally not look at the next little complicated thing, because I've just got to that point where I feel like quite happy having overcome one complicated thing. And then you have to deal with the fact that there's actually another infinity of complicated things that makes all the overcoming of whatever complicated thing you've just overcome fairly pointless, because the magnitude of complicated stuff to overcome far exceeds my lifespan. And even though like the motivation is unclear, but it brings up all this weird stuff. And then so I've noticed that I sometimes kind of blind myself to the next step of some challenge I'm dealing with in that context, right? And as I say, it's neither here nor there, right? My musical practice doesn't really make any difference to anything, but I notice denialism in some way, or maybe I'm over thingy, or if I want to kind of watch what I eat, I notice denialism coming in, or just choosing to be unaware of myself. And where times when I think, oh, I'll have a roll now, and thinking, oh no, the carbs, right? And then but somehow my brain fools me or distracts me or something like that, and I become somehow I choose to become unaware at that point, some trivial thing like that. And then when I'm talking to other people about, even if we're not talking about social collapse, ecocide, and all of this other shit that we like. If you talk to people about, now, for instance, the United Kingdom's economic situation is really going to hell in a handbasket, and the degree to which, even as it's happening, and even as it's happening in such a way that our sort of corrupt media do have to refer to it as happening, it's still very difficult to have a conversation with people where you can say, oh, look, well, obviously our economy is is collapsing. We don't have a government, and everything is leaning into chaos at the moment. And your health system is about to collapse, and nobody's going to be able to pay their bill. And we're all going to freeze this winter, and the house is going to get damp. All these things that are just like seem to be de facto obvious things you still can't talk about with people. And so people will either deflect by going, oh, don't be so negative. That's very common. Oh yeah, blah blah blah. Oh, I don't want to talk about that. That's that's getting me down, whatever. And I'm thinking, yeah, did people talk like that in Nazi Germany? If someone was going, oh, let's escape to England and give up all our possessions and our security that we perceive here, and let's get on a boat and run away and go and hide or whatever, or let's get out of whatever's going on here. And some people went, oh, don't be so negative, blah blah blah, this will all blow over, right?
This brings to mind to me to this recent Terence McKenna interview that I posted actually on Reddit. And at some stage in his interview, he says something like, can't really quote, but he says the archaic mind used to be able to understand everything. The connection, the archaic mind being probably what we talk, what we define like a mind where, well, a brain where the alien cortex is under control or is used properly and is not dominating everything. So I think that in connection with what you're saying, you're describing people who are under the complete control of the alien cortex because they are disconnected, and they are disconnected with the universe, they are disconnected with all the signals of the natural world. So they can't really, probably because of also where they live, but I think it's because we always go back to this divide. We go back to this absence of connection. And that's what I was telling you when I answered your question about why people are in denial, and why we are not. I'm not saying that we're any way better. We just trying to awaken to something that is connecting us with all. And maybe we have it naturally. Maybe we are fighting against this control, this civilization, and we can. And as I answered to you, we can detect trauma consequences because we have, most of us, aware of our trauma, and the people who you're talking about are probably not aware that they're living in a madhouse and that they are traumatized, you see. So how could they question the lies if they have been used to be under the thumb of such pressure? So you see, we're talking about something that we've been exploring for a long time with you, and we've kind of gone beyond that now because we take this. Yes, we are in a madhouse. What is sane is insane. We're in an upside down world, and we have to work on ourselves and know ourselves. Like you took the example of diet, for example, like. If you know yourself and you don't even need to make an effort to say I'm not going to eat this roll, it's just because it's a path. And if you get more and more deep inside yourself, you will naturally not fall again in the traps of this civilization. Am I clear enough there? Am I?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the idea, that you sort of cleanse yourself somehow. I suppose that, I mean, again, I don't know if this is, because my knowledge of anything is like just this mishmash of random shit. So I don't talk authoritatively in any sense, but it just reminds me of the sense I get from sort of Eastern Taoism, Zen type of stuff, of like where you can just sort of settle in to a natural way, like Taoism talks about this idea of like least effort or whatever, and that which appeals to me. That you've got there's a natural, you can just sort of go with the flow, and which I'm not. I'm like incredibly sort of Germanic, neurotic sort of human being, but I like I like the idea that there is a sort of like there you can sort of connect with the natural monkey. Yeah, and yeah, exactly. So that you, I mean, again, this is the whole thing. Maybe this comes back a little bit to the topics that this podcast talks about, because the impulse to eat a bread roll or whatever is connected to this kind of mismatch between my biological nature, which is to, basically feed when the opportunity is there, right? And that's natural when you're living in an environment where some days there ain't nothing, and some days there's more than enough, kind of thing, and that balances out in a natural environment where you don't have just a bakery around the corner.
Yeah. We are in a total abnormal environment, and the abundance of food around us makes a stimulation that is absolutely absurd. And if you look at some wild animals, you will see that when they're close to humans and they're close to dump yards and stuff like that, they start to become sick. They start to eat, completely erratically. So there is definitely a disconnect there. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So like, in a way, you're trying to fight with, very ancient impulses that are evolutionary process or whatever, some process of development into whatever the fuck human beings are, has occurred, where for most of history, as far as we know anyway, we've been sort of living in a forest and blah blah blah, with I guess various levels of resource availability, sometimes good times and bad times, feast and famine or whatever. And now we've sort of suddenly, the modern monkeys have been sort of plonked into the world where everything's out of whack, and then you have to kind of use this like personal discipline to manage, to do exercise. Again, that's another one.
Personal discipline is again a control thing, so I don't think that's the way to go either.
No. But I totally agree with that. But the natural, the confluence, or the I don't know, is it symbiosis? Maybe that our natural existence within a sort of greater flowing environment where again, and I've got no idea whether this is accurate or is a romanticization, but if you're like a sort of like native type of person living in a forest somewhere, wherever the fuck that might be, and sometimes you have a lot to eat, sometimes you don't, sometimes you manage to hunt, sometimes you don't, sometimes you die of a disease and something else eats you, sometimes you don't, and whatever, you're in this kind of flow of reality where you do have that connection and a sort of rhythm with the whole of the living world that the modern world has kind of fucked up somewhat. But when you're in that, then you can flow. You are in the flow of all that stuff. But now, how do you find that flow when the entire environment is so artificial? And I'm saying that again, that comes again back to this issue that I've sort of brought up before, about this thing about, well, for you, maybe in a rural, scenario, you can't just walk around the corner and get a bread roll. So maybe that's different. But you're still in sort of civilization, isn't it? At the end of the day.
Yeah.
So so to get that sort of flow, to learn how to sort of like even if I sort of develop my self-awareness, and if I meditate for 7 hours every day, and I develop this thingy, at the end of the day I'm going to walk past a fucking hamburger shop with all this smell that operates on like the smell bit of my brain, which is probably the most powerful
reptilian
influence. Yeah. So and when I walk past the Turkish restaurant with their chicken grill going, and they're pumping that smell into the air, knowing blah blah blah, you know what I mean? So it's like, then to say, how do I find a state of being where I don't need to activate the sort of inner psychopathic tendency to go, no, you will not buy yourself a chicken kebab right now, and not just relating to that, but all of these things. And the idea then it comes it brings to mind this idea that, am I really an individual that has any control over my being?
Well, you shouldn't have. But the problem is you shouldn't have control. The thing is that what is controlling you? you know, like it's the whole thing of food and hunger and sleep and all these instinctual parts of us are completely deformed by our conditioning from a very young age. You
Yeah.
can observe that, for example, in young babies when they're newborns, and the different regimen of feeding has a long-lasting effect on them, whether they're breastfed, bottle-fed, fed by the time, what they're fed with. You know, it gives you a pattern for life. And then there's the conditions of our sick society that makes us live by the clock, and
Mm-hmm.
who regiment the times of meals to adjust to the school and then the working timetable. Same thing with sleep. We've had this conversation before, and I've posted
Mm-hmm.
stuff a while ago on sleep, when sleep was used to be, for example, in previously to the 19th century, something that happened in two phases, when
The
you'd wake up
biphasic
in the
sleep,
middle of
yeah.
the night, and since electricity and the working 40 hours a week and all that, the people have been more or less forced to sleep in a different way, which is creating probably some more imbalance in the brain and the behavior. So thirst is the same thing. I remember Hugh talking about this absurdity of telling people how much water to drink a day and having to drink when they're exercising or working out, which is
Yeah.
completely ridiculous because it
Yeah.
goes against your physiology. People
Yeah.
don't
I mean,
perceive
that actually does
hunger.
drive me. That's one of those things. Sorry to interject, but it's one of those things that actually drives me fucking insane when I see people walking around with water bottles. As if you're
Mm.
going to die of dehydration.
Oh, of course. But you see, when you if you don't perceive thirst, hunger, and tiredness, I mean, those are really quite a basic things,
Mm.
along with breathing. But all these functions of our ancient brain and of our archaic, I would say, brain are stifled, and they're part of the trauma imposed by this psychopathic environment we're living in. So our
Mm-hmm.
behavior is psychopathic, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think there is any way, to answer your question, to resolve, if I can,
Yeah.
to resolve this sort of thing, unless we go deep into ourselves again, and it's all again a work on knowing yourself and meditating, and your environment is irrelevant there, really, because whether you're rural like I am or urban like you are,
Mm-hmm.
you will be in contact with these psychopathic events, unless you're, yes,
Yeah.
as you said, living in a on top of a hill or in the middle of a rainforest or on a, on an
Yeah.
iceberg. But
Well, there is, so the thing is, like, when you try and like reference, apart from the fact that we don't really know directly what these historic lifestyles might have really been like, and that there's been this book come out recently. David Graeber and David Wengrow famously wrote this book called, oh fuck, I can't remember now. It's just come out recently. And it's sort of supposed to be reevaluating the political history of human civilization in general, and it's all been like, oh yeah, they've come to these amazing conclusions, and they've revealed the true nature of whatever human society is or whatever. And then there's, again, Fight Like an Animal is one who's been critical. There's been other critical things of saying the various, or what's his name, Jesus, this is terrible. The guy called Chad Mulligan, Hip Crime Vocab, which is a brilliant blog as well. And he's sort of been talking about how some of their, but basically these people, anthropologists, they brought out this book trying to sort of create a certain perception of what human political arrangements are like, and then there's a general acceptance of this knowledge, but then there's a bunch of fairly knowledgeable people saying no, their perspective is a load of bollocks again. So, but bearing in mind that we don't really know about what led to Göbekli Tepe and all of this stuff, we don't know really anything. But with that in mind, like you sort of think, well, if I exist in any sense, like we talk about this going within and finding oneself or whatever. But then it's like, well, yeah, you go within, find yourself, and realize that you sort of don't really exist, or that you're like this, you're a conglomeration of shit that happened to your grandparents and your parents and your school teachers, and again, the quality of Turkish kebab shops in your neighborhood, even, you know.
Yeah, but
And
that doesn't really matter, because you know, that you come back really to uh, we are doomers. We know that we're basically fucked.
yeah,
We know that we're at the end of this evolution of humanity as the way it's going. So we all this is a bit irrelevant. Yeah, knowing yourself doesn't have to be have a name and a
yeah,
purpose to be able to live like our ancestors. I mean, that is a
yeah,
complete, you know, it's completely absurd.
yeah.
Um,
No,
uh,
no, yeah, we
you
can't
know,
live like our ancestors.
no, and anarcho-primitivism and John Zerzan make me sometimes feel a bit uncomfortable about that, because they have a sort of it's a sort of moral type of thing that's a bit heavy too. You know,
Yeah,
we're there to enjoy something beautiful, and we're in a constant evolution. We don't know where we're going. We know that we might be going back to the stars, like Terence McKenna says. We know that but we're still in this show, and
mhm,
you know, we can moralize and say we shouldn't be eating this. We should. All that is become totally irrelevant now. And the need to know yourself and to deepen maybe our connection with everything is without purpose, in my opinion.
yeah,
It's just because that's the way we want to live now, because we're
yeah,
open our eyes
yeah,
and
but yeah,
other, and we want to enjoy maybe this reconnection, and maybe experiment the joy of being in collapse, actually.
yeah, yeah. That intrigues me because yeah, I don't know how to. I mean, you sound very much like those Zen people I've been listening to,
Oh,
and and so yeah, and I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know how to kind of that sounds right to me. That sounds like a sort of a good view to have, but I personally don't seem to be able to quite internalize that, I suppose, because I still feel like, you know, okay, I recoil at like participating in a lot of the stuff that society has to offer, and I don't enjoy it. I don't have access to joy as such. It's like an alien thing to me, except in very rarefied circumstances, I suppose. But yeah, so I think I can't. Yeah, I'd like to have that on a t-shirt or something, and try and, I guess, myself try and be able to like encapsulate that attitude. At the same time, there's something like, so one of my huge fucking bugbears is like people who fly. I really hate it. I mean, like, I have a visceral hatred of people who fly, particularly like holidays, right? Holidays and flying. And I know I'm about to do something like a holiday, but I just hate. There's something about it I find incredibly offensive. And I understand that. Okay, there's two. Well, there's one argument or thing that says it doesn't fucking make any difference whether you do or don't. So just enjoy yourself and go to Spain for 2 weeks. And the other thing is this idea of accelerationism, which also kind of appeals to me to some extent, which is like, yeah, but you know, the more you contribute to the collapse of things, the more something might survive after it. But at the same time, there's this sort of moral rejection of this, you know, sort of obscene, selfish behavior that's wasteful and pointless and, you know, narcissistic. So there must, you know, or I'm not saying, well, there's not must be, but if my gut reaction is that there must be some sort of perspective for a moral attitude about something, rather than going, oh well, everything's fucked, so anything I do, or maybe that's not what you're saying anyway, but
No, what I'm saying, I don't think you need to justify morally anything you do. I think this is
yeah,
not. This is part of the heritage that we have from our Judeo-Christian conditioning, and I
yeah,
don't think even somebody who. I mean, I look at I look I look at people who go on holidays flying all around the world the same way
yeah,
you do,
yeah,
even though I've done it in the past, and I was not
yeah,
aware of maybe certain things I
yeah,
was
likewise.
part of. But you know, now, does it really matter? I don't know. Does it really matter? I
Well,
have no
it's like,
idea.
to me, it matters because I would be doing something that I consider degenerate.
Yeah, yeah. I know what you mean, but
So,
on the
like,
other
again,
hand,
I kind of always go back to that sort of Auschwitz guard, where it's like, well, yeah, well, does it really matter if I gratuitously indulge my psychopathic tendencies and shoot women and children in the head for a laugh? Because if I don't do it, someone will. It doesn't matter if I screw the gas canister into the into the
yeah,
vent thingy to murder all these people. Well, it's easier just to go along with it. Apparently, they didn't have to. Anybody could have resigned from that job.
But
They
you
weren't.
can't be too rigid and frozen because you get into
Yeah,
this death type of place. You
yeah,
can't. It reminds me of the Extinctionati number 3: avoid order and chaos. Navigate the
yeah,
razor edge between, and
yeah.
life is unstable. Life is novelty. Life is fractal. We have if we
Mm.
start to put things into do and no do and rigidity and everything like that, we've lost the
Mhm.
plot totally.
Yeah,
uh, where it's only for a fraction of a second in humanity's life that we have been flying around the place. It's just a
yeah.
few seconds in humanity. I know that these few seconds have had an enormous impact on the world, but it's not the only one. And I don't think you can be now. I was a bit like you, I must say. I used to really be frowning and thinking, oh, self-righteous. I'm not going to go on holiday because but that's, I mean, that's kind of gone. I don't go because I hate going away because I don't
Yeah, yeah.
like it. But
Well, I've got that too
it's,
as well. Yeah, so it might be that
yeah,
one thing
but
anyway
it's
informs the other.
probably become internalized in a funny way, in a acceptance of my probably archaic making, which is maybe you're a bit nomadic, but on the other
Mhm.
hand, you just don't go out of your little perimeter where you can reach places by walking,
Mhm.
or maybe a little wheel, and maybe that's that's the story. We have lost completely track of who we are, and I think it's for my mental health that I don't travel more than anything else, because
Yeah.
I dread the crowds and the airports and the noise and being in the air, and I feel my body cannot put up with that. So but it's
Mhm.
not doesn't come anymore from a moral point of view. It's internalized now, I think.
Yeah.
So
I think it's yeah. I've got all of that shit as well going on. I think, but
mm,
yes, it is that
mm,
sort of. But also yes, that visceral disgust from
mm.
participating in it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I don't think we have to be very careful of rigidity, and we have to be very careful of the other side, which is the total chaos of where we are now, which is where our society is now, which is in a way, I mean, inevitable, because we are in a madhouse. We're totally in a madhouse.
Yeah.
I just was listening to more stuff, but listen, talking about listening to more stuff, completely different subject. I've just heard about the two things in the physical world. Um, the first thing, I think, I don't know if somebody told me, or did I read it, or was it posted, that the world, I don't know, what is it? The days are getting shorter. The Earth is spinning
Ah.
fast.
Yeah.
That's funny, and I heard also that they were funny. I'm not an astrophysicist, and I have very little knowledge on physics, but it's only, I think, a microsecond of
Mhm.
anything. And the other thing is that there's been an explosion of a volcano in Iceland. So all
Ah.
this brought me back to the flippening, and
Yeah.
synchronicity. Somebody posted about the flippening on Reddit. I don't know if you looked at it, but
Yes,
I know
I did
who
see it. Yeah. Yeah.
say his name, but wondering if it's metaphorical, or are we still are the Extinctionati still onto this, and
Yeah.
are we believing in it, and all that. So I think that could be an interesting subject to bring up in our next conversation, or with
Yeah.
someone, even not us, not me and you, maybe two other, would invite other
Me too.
Extinctionati or other people who listen to this to get back into the debate, because
Mhm.
we have kind of dropped all this since our Lord
Yeah.
disappeared, because he was really pushing it. He had a lot of information on that. And have you something to say about this, Bob?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I I like the idea of the flippening. I guess the problem is that for me personally, I'm not going to be able to follow all these scientific papers, like to find out whether it's actually a real thing. I think I threw the idea into a couple of like various posts when I was on Reddit back in the day when I was on Reddit, and there was some like collapse related thread somewhere where I mentioned the flippening or Janibikov effect or whatever, and someone went, "Oh, faff poo, that doesn't apply." And I'm in no position to really get a scientific understanding of whether it is actually a viable thing to worry about or whatever. But the idea of it as a concept, so yeah, so in the sort of cultish sense, I quite like the idea of it. I've got mixed feelings, I suppose, to the extent of like being, the sort of, I guess, the sort of jester side of it, of being like reveling in this like really horrific event happening. And so part of me wants to revel in such a thing because, I think it does have that sort of mimetic effect. But yeah, I'm inclined towards bringing it up again. And I guess if we have any among us who are in a position to give some insight into whether it is like on the physical level a real thing, or whether it's just a sort of mythological focal point for us. But I like it. I like the idea of it.
Okay, because you see, we have a meeting on next Sunday, Eastern meeting. I don't know how many people are going to be on it. It's because a lot of people who used to be on it are just have got their everyday life things that are happening at the moment, so they might not be able to be there. But could also be a topic of conversation, because there might be some other Extinctionati who have things to say about it. And I've just noticed that we are nearly over the hour of conversation. We might be stopped by Jitsi. I'm not sure how it happens, because in the meetings,
maybe it's a good opportunity anyway to sort of wrap it up then.
We could conclude on that, and maybe open, and if somebody wants to pick up the thread where it is now on the flippening. And I think it was very nice to talk with you, and I think we should have those one-to-one conversations again and again.
Yep.
And there we go. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's cool. Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, have a very nice day, and I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye. I'll stop the recording. Bye-bye.